kid, I loved Beetles, both the crawly kind and the vroom vroom kind. But little did I know of their sinister Nazi origins. For real, Hitler was totally behind the R&D of the Volkswagen. Sure does make a guy think, but not too hard. Hitler was definitely evil, but history as a whole was quite strange. You see, in the 1930s, most German automobiles were luxury cars, especially during the Great Depression, which hit Germany so hard. There were documented cases of people who literally had wheelbarrows full of money, but couldn't buy a loaf of bread. Most people could, at best, hope to buy a motorcycle, this being at a time when only 1 in 50 Germans owned cars. There was considerable demand for a cheap, reliable car that could drive families around. So Hitler decided, "We need to build this Wandercar!" He called it the KDF wagon. KDF standing for Kraft durch Freude, which when translated means strength through joy. In 1933, Hitler instituted the beginning stages of what would become Volkswagen, literally the people's car. Hitler's Germany was kind of fond of slapping Volks onto things, which means the people's. Volkswagen wasn't the only case of this. There was also the Volksempfänger, which was a very cheap radio that people could use to listen to the sweet, buttery tones of Hitler's voice.
Ich hätte gut daran getan, von Jahren alle höheren Offiziere liquidieren zu lassen, wie Stalin! Wicklinge, Verräter, Versager! Ehrlich, die Generalität ist das Geschmeiß des deutschen Volkes!
Oh yeah. Back to the Volkswagen. The Nazi scientists put a lot of thought into this car. It was actually one of the first cars that was ever tested in a wind tunnel. The engineers toiled away for 6 years until 1939, until Hitler decided to unveil the new car. But we all know what happened next. War. Volkswagen then shifted their attention to military vehicles, like the Kubelwagen, or bucket car, and the Schwimmerwagen, so named for friends David Schwimmer, and the Schwimmwagen, meaning swimming car. Getting serious for a moment, at this point in time, a lot of Volkswagen's production came from slave labor, mainly that of prisoners in the Arbeitsdorf concentration camp. In 1998, VW actually admitted that about 15,000 slaves were used in the production of their cars during the war. By 1945, the VW factory at Kolbstadt had been bombed to death and back. And by April of that year, the invading Americans
Woohoo! USA! USA! USA!
captured it, later handing it over to the British. Over time, the Brits really came to like these new cars.
It's so lovable. You don't know whether to drive it or hug it.
And British officers began importing lots of Beetles back to the UK, before exporting the Beetles a couple decades later. The Volkswagen didn't get to America until 1949, then called the Victory Wagon. Oh, come on guys, didn't we learn from Freedom Fries? Because people were still a little antsy about the whole Nazi thing. In the whole year of 1949, only 2 Volkswagens were sold in the US. Eventually though, as the younger generation got older, the car really caught on in the 60s and 70s. In 1973, the Volkswagen sales broke the record set by the Ford Model T, with over 15 million units sold, which at the time made Volkswagen the best-selling car in history. If you're curious, the current record holder is the Toyota Corolla with 40 million sales. Eventually, Volkswagen began branching out with new models, like the Mystery Machine-style hippy van, originally designed for transporting goods, beatniks, and small Midwestern families. And that, my friends, is how the Volkswagen went from a glimmer in Adolf Hitler's eye to the second most profitable car company in the world. As always, ask me a question and I'll answer it in the next video. Just don't ask where the bodies are hidden. Guten Tag.